Welcome back to ReadingBear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, I'm not giving you the $600 I owe you. So my brother-in-law lives with my wife and I. We split the rent with him paying $300 and my wife and I paying $450 apiece. We also try to split the bills among us. Bills typically are $450, internet, water, electricity and trash. See, here's the problem. My brother-in-law thinks he shouldn't pay a portion of the bills because $300 is too much for rent. So it would take me tooth and nail to get him to pay his part of the bills. Problem is, since COVID came around, I lost my job, so I had to do whatever it took in order to pay my part of the bills, whether it meant working with family or doing odd side jobs. Problem was, I'd have to start paying his portion of the bills because he would never be home sometimes from him working, or would just avoid me and his sister. So what do I do? When there were some months that were hard to pay the bills and I couldn't come up with the 2/3 like always to pay, I would just ask him to borrow money with the promise I'd pay it back. Well, after a few months of doing this and not paying any money back, we are now getting close to Christmas time. Yesterday he sent me a text saying he needs all of the $600 he's let me borrow. I told him I'd pay him his $600 back no problem, once he's paid the 8 months of bills he owes me, which came out to be a little under $1,200. I guess it must have shocked him so much that him thinking he was owed money, that it turned out he owed money. So today he told my wife he's gonna move somewhere else where rent and bills isn't gonna be so high. Guess he's gonna live in a box. Update: Bill says I owe him the $600 regardless of what he owes in bills. He says he doesn't understand how he owes so much in bills. So he's been talking with a friend who has a small room for rent and says he's going to go there. Too bad he's such an idiot and can't realize what he's charging him. He boasting how he's not even gonna charge him bills, just rent, which is $450. Told him he's an idiot cause that's literally what he pays here, if not less sometimes, cause the bills fluctuate. The next one is titled, Petty Revenge on My Skydiving Instructor at 7,000 feet high. This happened in 2016 when I went tandem skydiving, but to tell the story I need to give a bit of backstory. When I was 17, the end of 2007, I suffered a spinal cord injury and I'm now an incomplete quadriplegic. 2008 and 2009 were difficult, as I had to learn to adjust to my life in a wheelchair. Having my dad with me made this so much easier. But near the end of 2009, tragedy struck again when my dad died in a plane crash. The following 7 years consisted of me having to deal with his death and learning to live more independently. That's its own story, so I'll get to the point. My injury was so severe that medically speaking, I shouldn't be able to move anything from the neck down, let alone have the mental ability to communicate or even type this out. My diagnosis was incorrect and I've gone well above what the doctors thought my physical and mental capabilities should be. I have mostly full use of my upper body and some use of my lower body. I am very stubborn, so if someone tells me I can't do something, I'll go out of my way to prove them wrong. This being part of the reason why I wanted to go skydiving. To prove to myself and to others that I can do it. Convincing my doctor to give me medical clearance to this was a big effort, but eventually she did. And then the day came. It was a week before Christmas in 2016, I was 26, and me and my brother were staying with family near the beach. I convinced my brother and our cousin to do it with me. My brother only agreed to do it because I was doing it. He's scared of heights. We went to the skydive building, which was at a small domestic airport next to the beach. We got harnessed up, got onto the plane and began the 20-minute plane ride to get to 14,000 feet. Throughout the entire plane ride, my instructor was trying to freak me out by saying things like, "Oh, look how high we are," and "Are you scared yet? It's a long way down," but none of this was getting to me. I wasn't nervous, but excited. When we were at 7,000 feet, the jump instructors started to harness us to them. My jump instructor was behind me and my brother and cousin and their instructors were in front of me. My instructor leaned forward and said, "How are you doing? Scared yet?" What I said in return was quite mean, but he sort of deserved it for attempting to freak me out. Yeah, I'm doing good. But now's probably not the best time to tell you that my dad died in a plane crash. I couldn't see his face, but I could feel his entire body go rigid behind me. My cousin was trying to hold back laughter, so I'm assuming he had a look of shock on his face. He stammered, before I turned to look at him and say, with a cheeky smile on my face, "You deserved that." He relaxed and laughed about it, then continued to attach my harness to his. The jump from 14,000 feet was incredible and I'm so glad I did it, but looking back on it now, I probably shouldn't have said that to the poor guy. But in that moment I felt it was deserved. The next one is titled, Not on My Range. About 20 years ago I was an trained adult leader which had the initials that fit with Babysitters of America, which is something that we had to remind certain people of. I frequently volunteered to staff many events that were put on by either the local district or higher parts of the organization. The people who staffed these events tended to, for the most part, all be the same group with others coming in to fill positions that required their unique skill sets. It didn't me very long, exactly 2 such events, to learn to stick to the one area where I had experience from my years in the US Army, which was staffing the BB gun, and later rifle, range as a range safety instructor. These were my best and most favorite years working with this organization, and I would still be doing it if it weren't for a Karen who insisted that her son could not be responsible for actions that, by the way, that he admitted to and apologized for, he committed, but is another story entirely. This particular event was held to celebrate the beginning of springs and the flowing of maple sap make maple sugar and syrup. On this day I was, as usual, doing the safety briefing and basic instruction for the children. Being a progressive district, we allowed girls to attend and participate in all events as well as boys over a decade before National followed suit, and parents on what behavior was expected on the firing line and how to correctly sight in so as to at least hit somewhere on the paper bullseye targets that were used. We had other leaders, with even more training as me, who acted as floaters who relieved other leaders so that they could take short breaks. Both the range master, who had been trained at the national level, and myself rarely, if ever, took breaks because, by agreement between of us, that if either of us had to leave for a bathroom break we would shut the range down until both of us were on site. This made for a long, but very enjoyable, day for both of us. Working with enthusiastic children, and their equally enthusiastic parents, as well as with one of your best friends made the days fly by. This particular day there was this one parent who raised all the red flags as soon as he got out of the car with his wife and son. The people working the registration desk intentionally dealt off the bottom of the deck and gave him a schedule that sent him and his wife and son to the BB range as their very last station of their day. As it turned out, he was a total hemorrhoid at every other station unless his wife was helping their son at an activity that was beneath a man. The great thing about having floating staffers, even if they knew that your station would not need their services, was that whenever a problem parent was coming through was that they would come over as that parent was a couple of stations away and point them out to you. When he and his son were 2 stations away it was pointed out that his wife had disappeared, but to expect all 3 of them when they showed up at the range. And sure enough, when they arrived at the range the wife was with them and she was carrying a soft side rifle case. ROH. Now the rules on any BSA range clearly state that all BB guns and or .22 rifles will be supplied by the event and are the only ones that will be allowed to be used. I gave my usual safety briefing and sighting instructions. When I finished he reached over and took the soft side case from this wife. I asked very politely, "Pardon me sir, what is that in that case?" Problem father's reply, "Don't you worry about it, me, sir, it is my duty to worry about the safety of this range and I will have to ask you to leave it. You will not tell me what that is. PF, it is none of your concern. Me, in that case, sir, I will have to ask you to take your son and leave this range, PF, and how will you do that?" We had 2 special deputy county deputy sheriffs who volunteered to work our open to the public events because they had been members of the organization as youths and loved what we did. They had been informed that PF may be a problem when he got to the range, so they happened to just wander by when he was going to be there. Me, sir, I may not be able to make you, but these 2 deputies will do it if I ask. PF, okay. It's a Model XX BB gun that he is going to use when it's his turn. Me, I'm sorry sir, but the regulations that govern this range state that we must supply all the rifles used on this range and that we cannot allow anyone to bring their own. PF, what? Me, I'm sorry sir. You will have to take it back to your car or leave it with someone who will not be going on the firing line. I think the vehemence of my last sentence set him back a bit. During my army years I had developed a very stern and loud, command voice. I have rarely ever had to use it, but when I do it is very clear that I will not brook any silliness from anyone. PF said, okay, and handed the case to his wife who was not in line. I knew that he was still going to be a problem, so when he and his son were at the shooting bench I kept an close eye on him. After I did the safety briefing, my other duty was to keep an eye on one end of the firing line while the range master watched the other. Everything was going well right up until one of the targets became loose on one corner and a ceasefire. Guns on the table was called so the range master could go down range and rehang the target. I rarely ever kept my whistle in my mouth, but this seemed the time to do just that. I had spent the money to buy on the lanyard whistles used by college referees at that time. I figured if it could be heard over 90,000 screaming fans it would work just fine for me. It did. Everyone had been told that when a ceasefire had been called that all guns were to be placed on the table and not touched. And that had worked all day, until now. And who picked up their BB gun while the range master was downrange? You guessed it, PF. I let out a blast that could have been heard over an Ohio State, Michigan game crowd. Everybody on the range jumped, except my buddy fixing the kid's target. Me, put that gun down. What part of do not touch the gun during a ceasefire don't you get? PF, I'm sorry. Geez. Me, if it happens again not only off this range you will off the camp as well. PF, okay. Okay. I glanced over my shoulder and saw his wife practically peeing herself, doing a serious silent laugh. Revenge was had. The next one is titled, You Wanna Keep Us Up All Night? Okay, but Jeff and I were spending a Saturday night at the Shepherd Mountain Inn in Arcadia, Mo. We'd had dinner and a couple drinks at Bailey Joe's Barbecue, the great barbecue place next door, and were going to bed early. We'd had a few days of great riding in Moore, Missouri and Arkansas, and were planning on getting up around 5 a.m. to get a good start on the 250-mile ride home the next day. One problem though. There was a wedding party staying at this dive motel. It was pouring rain and they were right outside our window under the overhang partying like it was 1999. I don't blame them, it's a wedding on Saturday night, we left them be. But this went on for hours, and about 1:30 a.m. I stepped outside and asked them if they would move down a few rooms as we were getting up early. They politely agreed. But in fact, they did not move and the party finally petered out around 3 a.m. Did I mention we were getting up at 5? Whatever, into each life, some rain must fall. So Jeff doesn't set an alarm, he just wakes up and showers. At 5 a.m., he shakes me awake and says, time to get up. That is literally all he said. I start to get up and all of a sudden, there is a massive pounding on the wall from the room next door. Keep it down in there. From, you guessed it, the revelers from last night. I looked at Jeff and Jeff looked at me and it was on. We quietly got ready, got all our gear on, loaded the bikes and went outside. We then rolled our bikes right to where the exhaust pipes were touching the door of our new friends. Jeff fired up his Harley and I fired up my Yamaha. We proceeded to rev the motors rather injudiciously for a bit. Then I went back into the room, turned the TV on full blast, locked the door and off we went. When we stopped for gas a few miles later, Jeff and I exchanged a smirk and Jeff said something intended for the revelers that stuck with me ever since. Don't try to out-a-hole me, I'm better than you at it. Edit, we were on the end room of a one-story motel, revelers were next door. I think most of the rest of the people staying there were wedding guests also, but can't be sure. Collateral damage, I guess. The next one is titled, I Keep a Door Locked at Work. Okay, so this isn't necessarily bad, but I do get a kick out of it and a little bit of petty satisfaction. There are like 6 doors at the entrance of the building where I work security. I'm filling in for first shift, which means it's up to me to open the building up for everyone in the morning and just do various first shift tasks before everyone gets here. On my regular shift, all but one door is locked after public hours and I get these drunker holes that work in the building trying to open every single door. While I am clearly trying to direct them towards the one that they have to open, which they should know since they've worked here for years. They do this almost every single night since the bars are right around the corner. Yes, even with COVID, no one in my city gives a single crap about it, unfortunately. Anyways, I used to love my job, but after going out of my way for the people in the building and still being belittled, treated like an idiot by a bunch of lawyers and accountants, I hate it. There are only like 6 people max that stop and say hi and chat with me. One makes me brownies and cookies because she's a sweetheart, and I like watching the others run into the door. I don't know why, but almost everyone uses the ducking door and I just don't bother to unlock it in the mornings. I know that it probably sounds stupid to think that I could find this very small act to be satisfying, but it is. Just a bunch of dummies ramming into the glass door like birds. The next one is titled, "Oops, did I drop those drinks? How silly of me." This story isn't mine but my mum's. When I first started working in service industry, she told me this story from when she was a waitress. I don't know when this happened, at a guess about 30 to 40 years ago. Another waitress had spoken to my mum and asked if she could cover her table because one of the men kept touching her when she went over. My mum ended up serving the drinks to that table and stood by the guy. As predicted, the guy grabbed my mum and in shock she dropped the drinks and said, "I'm so sorry sir, I was so shocked when you grabbed my butt that I lost balance." His wife started apologizing to my mum and screaming at him. Needless to say, he was very embarrassed. Carrot 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 core. The next one is titled, "Block my car in the handicapped spot will you?" Info: I shattered my leg in a fall and with all the rods, pins and screws my leg doesn't have much bending mobility and I am considered permanently disabled. I use crutches for short trips, but use a wheelchair otherwise. So last summer I went to a shopping center that surrounds a parking lot in my area and was going into a shop that was next to 2 handicapped parking spaces. I parked in the spot to the right so that I would be able to open my car door all the way to accommodate my leg. In between the spots was the area with the diagonal blue stripes that you are not supposed to park in as a wheelchair can't get in, out of their vehicles. Well, lo and behold, when I exited the shop there was a Mini Cooper parked in that area. I was unable to get my door open more than 8 inches. So I waited, and waited. After 15 minutes still no one comes out to the car and my leg is now starting to bother me from standing. I wait another 10 minutes and call my daughter who lived about 20 minutes away from the shopping center so that she can back my car up for me to get in and come home. At this point, I am just seeing red, which reminds me I have an old lipstick in my bag. I take it out and write in full windshield size letters, "Nice job," all the across the glass. If you were sitting in the driver's seat you could read it perfectly as I had written it backwards on the outside. My daughter showed up about 15 minutes later and was able to move my car so I could leave. The owner of the car never came out in that entire 45 minutes and I felt he deserved it for being such a jerk. Wish I could have seen that face. Hope you enjoyed. I know I got a giggle out of it while driving away and still do to this day. The next one is titled, "Treat me like absolute crap and favor my lazy, incompetent colleagues instead?" Okay then, you only get 1 week's notice of my resignation. I work as a paralegal in an office and have been here for 2.5 years. I'm currently employed as a casual but work full-time hours, 36 hours a week. I started off with an amazing, supportive and friendly supervisor until she left and got replaced with someone within the organization who has been working here for 15 years now. The issue here is, I take absolute pride in my work and put a lot of effort. I receive constant praise from the lawyers and they often email my supervisor informing her about my great assistance with some projects. My supervisor, however, doesn't seem to appreciate this for some reason and she favors the lazy people in my team who get through by sucking up to her. There have been so many great people who have left because of this woman and at one point an external third party became involved to resolve a dispute because of her behavior. I have talked to some lawyers about her behavior towards me and they informed me that it's pure jealousy because I go to a great law school. I'm not exactly sure how accurate that is, but whatever. I decided that I have had enough of wasting my efforts into this office and apply somewhere else. Also thought about leaving before this so I can get more experience before I graduate my law degree. I applied to become a judge's associate, got accepted, and will start mid-January. This position's salary is slightly higher than my supervisor's too. I'm going to break the news to her today. She'll only have 1 week's notice. Reminder, I'm casual, so I can do this, about my resignation, and I won't be coming back after the Christmas break, meaning she'll be understaffed in the new year and will have to hire someone to replace me. Merry Christmas, witch. The last one is titled, conveniently, misplacing my sister's phone without her knowing. So it's the last week of school, which means finals. Okay, whatever, I can power through it. Stressful but no biggie. My sister, however, likes to take out that stress by giving everyone attitude. By that, I mean taking a loudish tone and giving snarky replies to generally harmless questions. How was your class? What the heck do you want to know about it? What did your teacher assign today? It's none of your business. Can you get out of the room? I don't really take lightly to that, and I know that she likes texting her friends during breaks, after classes, so I sometimes nab her phone while she's in the bathroom and hide it in the same room, or take it to the living room and hide it under a couch pillow, blanket. Usually just places she frequents a bunch in the house, so no, there's no suspicion on my end. She's been getting slightly frustrated at constantly misplacing her phone, so hearing the occasional huff and whine is definitely satisfying. Thanks for listening.